For decades, it was only a rumor, a muted echo among files sealed with black ink and the whispered voices of veterans afraid to be heard. An operation so secret, so dangerous, that even the sailors themselves didn't fully know where they were or what they were doing. Reports vanished, names were erased, and official records were rewritten. Whenever a journalist asked, the answer was always the same. No record of such a mission exists. But in the corridors of Langley and in the berths of certain submarines, the story was very different. Because in the shadows of the Cold War, when humanity learned to live on the edge of the nuclear abyss, men descended into the depths of the ocean not to attack, but to listen. More than 100 meters below the surface, where the sun never reaches and sound becomes echo, the United States embarked on a mission that combined the precision of engineering with the absolute risk of espionage. In 2005, when the documents finally came to light, the world learned the truth. An operation carried out in Soviet waters, beneath ice and silence, in which a group of American submariners had intercepted the Kremlin's most tightly guarded secrets. That mission, denied for 4 decades, not only redefined naval espionage, it showed how far a nation would go in the name of silence and information. This is the story of Operation Ivy Bells, a mission so dangerous, so silent, and so decisive, that for 40 years it did not exist. In the early 1970s, American intelligence faced a dilemma that bordered on the impossible. The Kremlin had erected an invisible wall of silence. New encryption codes, sealed internal communications, and a surveillance network able to detect any aerial or naval intrusion. What once could be uncovered with a microphone or a camera now required something more: ingenuity, audacity, and absolute silence. The Soviets had moved some of their most sensitive military communications into an environment where no spy had dared to enter. The ocean floor, across the Sea of Okhotsk, a vast, frozen, turbulent stretch off Siberia, ran a network of submarine cables linking nuclear submarine bases at Petropavlovsk to Soviet Pacific command centers. Those cables transmitted orders, patrol coordinates, launch protocols. They were, literally, the arteries of the Soviet nuclear machine. Intercepting them was unthinkable. The waters were strictly guarded by the Red Navy, mined, patrolled by anti-submarine vessels, and ringed with acoustic sensors. To the Pentagon, that area was forbidden territory. Entering it was tantamount to declaring a war no one could win. But at Langley, someone asked the question that would change the history of naval espionage. What if we could listen without being seen? From that question was born a mission that, in the official records, never existed. Its code name, Operation Ivy Bells. Its objective, descend to the bed of the Sea of Okhotsk and place a device capable of recording the conversations running through Soviet cables without anyone noticing. It was an idea so bold it bordered on madness. They had to build a system that operated in total silence, that withstood abyssal pressure and did not interrupt the cable's signal to avoid arousing suspicion. The smallest mistake, a vibration, a metallic sound, a stray interference, could expose the American presence. The project was entrusted to an uncommon alliance of the CIA, the NSA, and the United States Navy. Engineers at the Naval Research Laboratory designed a special microphone, a titanium cylinder with sensors capable of picking up the electromagnetic oscillations of the cables without cutting them. The device had to record weeks of conversation on magnetic tape and be recovered periodically by elite divers trained to operate in complete darkness. And so, in the most absolute silence, an incursion was planned that would defy the laws of physics, diplomacy, and sanity. A mission to listen to the enemy's secrets from the only place no one expected to be listened to, the bottom of the sea. In the summer of 1972, when the Cold War burned beneath the surface of the world, a nuclear-powered American submarine set sail from the North Pacific with a destination that officially did not exist. Its name, USS Halibut, SSGN 587. Its mission, to penetrate Soviet waters, locate a submerged communications cable, and plant a device upon it capable of listening to the enemy, without the enemy ever knowing. It was a mission so delicate that not even many Pentagon officials were aware of it. Records were erased, logs sealed, and names replaced with coded designations. Everything was archived under a vague label, Project Azorian, a decoy designed to mislead even those with the highest levels of clearance. In truth, Azorian hid two secrets, one public, the recovery of sunken Soviet submarine, and one even deeper, Ivy Bell's the true jewel of underwater espionage. For weeks, the Halibut sailed in utter silence, gliding like a shadow beneath the ice. Its propellers were redesigned to eliminate all vibration, its hull coated with sound-absorbing materials. On board, a team of elite divers rehearsed on dry decks the maneuvers they would have to execute 120 meters below the surface, in complete darkness, under pressures capable of crushing steel. A single mistake, a metallic clang against the hull, and the entire Soviet Pacific Fleet would know something was moving in their waters. The submarine sensors scanned the seabed of the Sea of Okhotsk for days, searching for an electromagnetic anomaly, an invisible line winding through the sand and silt. Then, on a starless night, they found it. A thick cable, draped in seaweed, armored in steel and silence. It was the main communication artery of the Soviet Pacific Fleet. The crew held their breath. This was not just a cable, it was the secret pulse of the enemy. The divers descended with slow, deliberate movements. The water was black, frozen, still. In that darkness, they placed, with surgical precision, a cylindrical device about the size of a buoy directly onto the cable. The device did not cut or interfere with the signal. It simply listened. It copied every impulse, every vibration, every word that traveled through that metallic thread between Soviet commanders. Inside the device, magnetic tapes turned silently, recording encrypted conversations, movement orders, nuclear submarine reports, and direct messages from Moscow. Everything the Soviet Union believed no one could ever hear was being captured. Every month, a new American submarine returned to the same coordinates, performing a silent dance with danger to retrieve the tapes and replace them. The information was sent directly to the NSA, where analysts spent weeks decoding the voices and messages rising from the ocean floor. The success was overwhelming, so much so that within the intelligence community, Ivy Bells became a living legend. For the first time, the United States not only knew what the Soviets were doing, but when and why. And in Moscow, as admirals continued to transmit orders across the depths of the Sea of Okhotsk, no one suspected that the enemy was already listening from the very ocean that was supposed to protect them. For nearly a decade, Operation Ivy Bells was the perfect ghost, silent, invisible, flawless. Each tape recovered from the depths of the Sea of Okhotsk was a treasure trove of strategic intelligence. On those recordings lay the Soviet Union's most closely guarded secrets. Nuclear launch protocols, submarine patrol routes, missile test data, and high-level military discussions. It was, without exaggeration, the most valuable source of intelligence in the entire Cold War. NSA analysts nicknamed it the Line of God because it seemed as though the United States could hear everything. And for years, the enemy suspected nothing. But no secret lasts forever. In 1980, the silence was broken. A man named Ronald William Pelton, a communications analyst for the NSA, broke, disillusioned, and consumed by frustration, crossed a line from which there was no return. Pelton knew about Ivy Bells, its existence, its location, its method, and its importance. And when money ran short, he decided to sell it all. He crossed the ocean to Vienna and met with a KGB officer. There, in a modest hotel room, he revealed the operation the United States had protected for a decade. The price of his betrayal, $35,000, not even the cost of a new car. What he sold, however, was worth more than any bomb. It was the key to discovering how the United States had been listening to the Kremlin beneath the sea. Months later, a team of elite Soviet divers, under the highest secrecy, descended into the Sea of Okhotsk. Following the leaked coordinates, they searched for days through cold currents and utter darkness. And finally, they found it. A metal capsule covered in seaweed, embedded in the seabed, still recording. The Soviets extracted it carefully, fully aware of what they had found. When they opened the device and analyzed its contents, the magnitude of the espionage stunned them. The United States had been recording classified Soviet communications for nearly 10 years, and no one had ever noticed. In Moscow, the reaction was immediate. The discovery was deemed a direct act of aggression against the Soviet Union, a violation of its sovereignty equivalent to a military attack. The Kremlin ordered the reinforcement of all underwater communications and the complete redesign of its encryption protocols. And in Washington, the response was silence. The CIA denied everything. The Pentagon destroyed files, and the White House repeated the same phrase with calculated coldness. That mission never existed. For 40 years, that remained the official version. But in the corridors of U.S. intelligence, everyone knew the truth. The betrayal of a single man had sunk one of the most brilliant operations in the history of modern espionage. And beneath the sea, in the cold waters of the North Pacific, only the rusted remains of a capsule remained, one that had once listened to the heartbeat of an empire. Decades later, the silence began to crack. With the collapse of the Soviet Union and the fall of the Iron Curtain, thousands of documents that had remained under top classification began to surface. Among them, a single name reappeared in the margins of several declassified Pentagon and CIA reports. Ivy Bells. The rumors were true. The operation wasn't a legend or the invention of retired spies. It had happened in the cold waters of the Sea of Okhotsk, just as had been whispered for decades. Testimonies from former USS Halibut submariners and NSA technicians reveal the details. Missions were planned months in advance. Divers descended in total darkness, and every recovered tape was sent to ultra-secret laboratories for analysis. The recordings captured from the Soviet cable were so clear that analysts could recognize the voices of Russian naval officers, distinguish regional accents, and even identify communication patterns between Pacific bases. The intercepted cable had been a gold mine of intelligence. It allowed the United States to anticipate Soviet strategic movements, calculate the true range of their nuclear submarines, and understand the internal structure of their naval command. Thanks to Ivy Bells, potentially catastrophic crises were avoided, including Arctic confrontations and accidental nuclear fleet deployments. It was the war of silence, fought and won with microphones instead of missiles. But with every revelation came a shadow of regret. The mission, once secretly celebrated as a technical and tactical triumph, became a reminder of how far human ambition can go in the pursuit of control. Many of the veterans who had taken part later confessed to feeling a mix of pride and guilt. Pride for having achieved the impossible. Guilt for having crossed an invisible line that could have triggered a world war. The declassified files revealed another, more bitter truth. Ronald Pelton's betrayal had cost lives. Some covert agents indirectly linked to the operation disappeared, and the KGB's discovery of the listening device accelerated an unprecedented underwater technological arms race, one in which every nation sought to listen deeper, better, and with fewer scruples. In the end, Operation Ivy Bells became a warning, an echo from the depths. No secret, no matter how deeply it is buried beneath the ocean, stays hidden forever. The sea keeps its truths, but sooner or later, it returns them. And when it does, it changes the course of history, once again in silence. The mission the United States denied for 40 years proved that the Cold War was not only fought in the skies, in offices, or across fields divided by walls, but also in the unfathomable abyss of the ocean, where the darkness was so dense that even truth itself had to learn to breathe in silence. Down there, amid freezing currents and crushing pressure, men without faces or names defied what science deemed impossible, guided by a purpose they could not admit, not even to their own families. While the world looked upward, celebrating lunar missions and the conquest of space, others descended in the opposite direction, into the depths, in search of knowledge that could never be shared. The ocean floor became the new invisible front of the Cold War, a place where the boundaries between espionage and survival blurred. Each dive of the USS Halibut was a wager against nature, against physics, and against the very possibility of return. Over time, the operation vanished from official records, buried under mountains of classified documents and bureaucratic silence. But some memories endured. Personal logs, letters never sent. The confessions of sailors who, decades later, could still hear the faint hum of the cables in the ocean's darkness. Because even though the names were erased and the reports sealed, the story of the USS Halibut still floats, like a shadow that refuses to sink, a testament that even in the most secret of wars, there are traces time cannot erase. The sea, eternal confidant of human secrets, remains a silent witness to what happened there. Its waters still conceal remnants of an era when a single recording could alter the fate of the world. And so, somewhere on the floor of the Pacific, where metal rusts and sound fades, the echo of that mission still resonates. A whisper from the depths, reminding us that the truth, sooner or later, always finds a way to surface,